First, before I get started, I just want to say I am so impressed with Dylan Edelman and everything that the crew has done here. It's really impressive and really cool. So let's give a hand. It's great. Only high schooler, I understand, to be allowed to do a TEDx. So thank you. This is so cool. And I'm thrilled to be the first speaker. You know, I have kind of a depressing topic, a little bit, but I think you'll find that we're going to talk about the opposite of failure here and how we can just get the idea of failure out of our minds, especially working in new ideas and in the new ways we need to move forward with the change in technology in the world that we're living in. So first, I want to just say, why focus on failure? Failure is something that, you know, we learn from a very young age. We shy away from it. But we also deal with it through our careers. And one of the things Azul 7 does, which is the company I founded, is that we are a human-centered design firm, and we do a lot of work with high-tech companies designing new products and services for the market. We also work with nonprofits, and we work with the government sector. And everyone knows we need to do things differently. It's really important. It's the only thing that we can do to address the changing landscape of our life, our culture, our planet. So when we're moving forward trying to do new things, failure becomes a really important idea that can get in the way. If we feel like we can't move out into the unknown and we're failing at something, it tends to keep us from moving forward. So I've been thinking a lot about why do we get into this habit of feeling like we're either failing at something or a success at something. And I was thinking about my own school experience. Hello. Okay, this is, am I back on? All right. All right. I'm going to keep going. Hopefully we'll keep the mics going too. This is me in 6th grade, and if you can't guess by the nerdy glasses, I wanted to be a scientist. And I was actually in Ohio, and in Ohio I took the state Ohio test for biology, and I got top 5 students in the state for biology. So I was all about science, I was all about math. And I got going through school, everything was fine until I was in high school. And then I hit trigonometry. And for whatever reason, trigonometry just knocked me on my butt. I couldn't do it. I was sitting in class, I was not following what the teacher was saying, and I started freaking out. I got through the first test, which I failed. I had never failed a test before. I was always a great student. And I went down to my guidance counselor, and I was on my way to applying for colleges, and I was a junior at the time. He said, you know, Lisa, this is the thing. You could try to work through trigonometry, but you've got a really good GPA. Why risk, you know, having a class that you don't do well in? So first of all, I thought, well, great. You know, I kind of want to stay in science, and I don't know about trig, and I was really starting to get freaked out about the math stuff. And he ultimately said, you know, I would say just skip the class so you can keep your GPA up. And this is, of course, this was the 70s, so I also got the, by the way, girls don't need math. You know, you're a girl, you don't need math. So it was a double whammy. And the whole idea of the story is that I learned from that lesson that looking like a success, having successful GPA was the main thing I needed to focus on in high school. And that stuck with me for a long time. And I don't think things have changed much today. I think in school we learn from a very early age that success is a metric that we need to hit. We can't fail. It's a bad thing. You don't want to get good grades. You don't want to do badly on a test. You want to meet the teacher's expectations. You want to meet the expectations of your friends and family. So it's a hard thing to get out of. You know, we really have it ingrained that we can't fail. So what happens? You know, when you feel like you're failing, you feel like it translates into paralysis. You don't move forward. Just like me, I didn't finish my class, and I couldn't go forward from that. I just stopped. And I also loved arts and science, arts and math and politics too. So I ended up going in a different direction from school, and sometimes I still regret it. But we need to think about failure differently if we want to move ahead. So before we get too far into the failure thing, I want to put some context around it. There's a really nice article on Harvard Business Review by Amy Edmondson, and she puts a nice framework around the idea of failure. So I want to start with that. So one of the things we can look at in terms of failure is preventable failures in predictable operations. So what does that mean? Well, that means, this is what I would consider true failure. You know what you're supposed to do, you know what should be done, but for whatever reason you're lazy or you're tired or you're just not willing to do it. Here's an example. Someone knew how to do that brick wall, but they just decided for whatever reason they weren't going to do it. So I would still define that as failure, and we'll just keep that in the failure bucket. If you know what you're doing and you know what should be done and you just don't do it, we can just say and agree that that's failure. Then there's unavoidable failures in complex systems. So what am I talking about here? Well, that would be something like this, where you're in a challenging environment. There's something that's hard to do, and you can do it most of the time, but you can't always do it. Like this horse and rider. Obviously, this rider can generally jump over those jumps, otherwise she wouldn't be doing it. But this time it didn't work. And sometimes when we're doing things that are hard or in very complex environments, it can make it very hard to do it consistently. So I would like to call this a challenge rather than a fail. Then there's also failures that we can look at. It's intelligent failures in the frontier. And that's where we need to have a different viewpoint in terms of moving forward, especially with innovation. So this is the area, you're moving into a new area. You don't know the answers. You don't even know the questions yet. So at this point, is this really a failure? I grew up in Ohio, which is where the Wright brothers invented all their flying machines. And this is kind of a silly picture, but what it's intended to portray is that when you don't know how to do something, you're going to start doing silly things, and you're going to do things that are probably wrong. But you have to start somewhere. And this is the area where we need to break down that idea of failure if we're going to succeed. So again, for the rest of the talk, I'm really talking about the unavoidable and intelligent failures. We're going to wipe those out. Those are not failures anymore. We're going to call them challenges, and we're going to call them innovation and prototyping. Okay, so how do we change our culture of failure? And been thinking a lot about this at our office because we're working in this with a lot of our clients. How do we get them to think and work differently and use different constructs so that we can actually think out of the box, move in a different direction, not define something as a success or a failure until we know more information? Well, one of the things that we thought about is, how do people learn? How do people, even animals, how do animals learn? What are the basics of how human beings learn to do things from a very young age? Quite honestly, we learn a lot of things through play. And we looked at this construct and we thought, hey, we can learn about through the ideas and the constructs of play that we can bring to this idea of innovation, and to wipe the failure word out of our vocabulary. So, dogs play, animals play. You see lion cubs fighting to learn how to hunt. You see wolf packs teaching each other who is, superior in the pack and who's going to be the follower. I mean, mammals play. All cultures play to gain skills, to gain, ways of working together. And it's not just children. I think play to some extent. Now we play with high-tech games, and those are things I think some of you kids probably doing that than actually doing your homework. I know that happens in my house. So what can we learn from playing games? Well, what's brilliant about games is that failure is built in. You don't think of it as failure, but when you're doing something over and over again, you're failing at it, and you're trying again. So if we can things in a game construct, we can really look at it as, failure is part of the deal. We don't even have to call it failure. Also, in games and designing games and looking at how games work, the idea of leveling up is built into many games. So what do I mean by leveling up? It's really designing into a system or a project an idea that we're going to go for a while until we learn enough, and then we're going to stop and reassess, and then we're going to either decide we've succeeded or failed, and then we're going to go on or we're going to stop. So this whole leveling up idea, if we can start building that into the way we think and the way we work, that it may help us design a way to work together and work through new ideas that are less stressful and reduce that risk. So another thing about games is that there's feedback and status along the way. And I think what works with this is that we've got an idea that we can put metrics around the work that we're doing. So if we can design a way to say, hey, you know what, we're going to do this 10 times, and if it doesn't work 10 times, then we're going to call it quits. Or we're going to decide that we're going to do it 10 times, and if we have the right information from that, we're going to decide to go in this path or this path. But it's learning to build those feedback systems, especially when you're working in areas where we don't really know what the outcomes are going to be. I think that's really helpful. Community collaboration is another important thing, and I love that about games. You can play games by yourself, but a lot of games really involve the community and working together on things. So community collaboration, it's really bringing in all the people that are involved in the work that you're doing to, again, reduce that risk of failure and to reduce the idea that there's miscommunication about what's going on. So it's all about reducing risk through the process, and I think that's important. Another wonderful thing about gaming is, and I'll keep talking until someone says not to, but we have this idea of discovery. We're on a quest. We're starting off in something new. So if you can define the project, the work that you're doing as a quest to go forward, you know, everyone knows we don't know what's next. We don't know what decision and what path to take. We as we go. So it's a nice construct to keep things moving forward without, again, that scared feeling that you get when something's not working out the way you think it should. Well, you know, you can only go forward with something for so long. So again, you have to know when to quit. And games have a construct for us around that too, and that's the countdown. So after a while, you know, you can only do things, as I said, for so long without, you know, wasting resources and wasting time. So if we look at, you know, let's put a countdown in, let's put a clock running, and so it allows us to quit when we're at that point where we're not making progress. And then last but not least, it's fun and engagement. You know, if you're doing work, I don't care where you're working. If you're in school, if you're in environments of work or you know, volunteering or whatever you're doing, it should be fun and engaging. And if it's not fun and engaging, then you probably need to do something differently. So I would think that if we can just stick with the idea that everything that we do needs to have, it may not be easy, it may not really be fun sometimes, but at least it's engaging and you're getting something out of it. And if we can build that in, we're going to be in much better shape too. Okay, so what's it going to take to really change the environment around failure and success? Well, courage, of course, because anytime we make change anywhere, it's hard for people. People don't like change, right? And you're still going to have that visceral feeling, like if I'm working in something new and something different, and we're going out to the edge of what's known, you know, I could get blamed for that. I could be doing the wrong thing. But if we can think of ways to work together and have different outcomes, you know, that's going to make things and make innovation work better. And having courage is going to be what it takes, especially when you're in an institution that's been around for a long time. So quickly, just one quick story about Azul 7. We started about 7 years ago. And when we started, we were a very different company. We started as a digital agency, and now we're doing design and innovation work. And it was really hard. We went through the downturn, and the economy we had a different business partner, and we got to a point where things weren't working very well. So I could have looked at it as a big failure. We need to do something different. But rather than thinking about it as a failure, I was thinking, hey, this is prototype 1 of my business. I need to do something differently. We're going to do a shift. Now we're on prototype 2, and before long, we'll probably be on prototype 3. So again, if I just look at everything we do as a prototype, something we're going to test, something we're going to try, I have a much different feeling about it. And really that reframing makes it so much easier to move forward. So I'm going to leave you with a couple things. How many people know John Cage? John Cage is a composer from mid-20th century, and he's an amazing artist. He was actually a guy who kind of redefined what music was for the music lovers of the world. He was an amazing artist. He worked with Robert Rauschenberg and Merce Cunningham, and they did a lot of amazing out there work in New York involving dance and art and installations. And I love this quote: "Nothing is a mistake. There's no win, and there's no fail. There's only make." And if we can move into our world with this attitude, especially coming out of high school, boy, there's nothing that's going to stop you. So I encourage you out there to think about, what do you want to do? What do you want to work on? What's next for you in your life and your community? And go out there and make some serious play. So everybody, let's go out and play. Thanks.